Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome on this gorgeous Saturday. It's absolutely beautiful out there. You're joining Mahmooda Duke on Leading Ladies. I've got 4 inspirational women joining us today. I've got Anisa from Cook with Anisa. I have got Cassie Davison from the Queen Victoria Arts Club. I have got, now, I'm going to introduce her as Sakina Garcia, but nobody knows her as Sakina. They all know her as Betty Brown. So I've got Betty from Betty Brown fame with her. She'll tell you about herself in a moment. And I have got Renu, who is our social media whiz, absolute whiz. So welcome to Leading Ladies. And you're here because you are inspirational women. You are here because you are fempreneurs or entrepreneurs, but fempreneurs is a phrase coined by Renu over here. I think I've seen a new phrase this week. Hashtag boss babes.
Hashtag boss babes.
Absolutely. 100%. So you're all boss babes as well. So that's why you're here. So today's program is all about women who are entrepreneurs. And I'm going to talk to these 4 ladies in a minute to tell us a little bit about themselves, about their businesses, about why they became entrepreneurs and how they got the courage to branch out on their own, because that is a pretty big step in one's life. Before I bring my guests in, I want to share something with our listeners out there. Well, first and foremost, I ought to tell them that they're listening to Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. If you want to connect with us, we are on Facebook Live. We are also on where are we? We're on Instagram as well. So you're on Leading Ladies Live as well. So if you're looking at Facebook, I think you need to go onto Ramadan Special on Leading Ladies Live. We're on Instagram. If you want to, there's our Insta handle. Hold on, it's being typed up for me. Insta handle, ramadan.fm. Thank you, Akil. He's our producer over there guiding me. We have text facilities. So text in. I want to hear from you on 07450 925084. Or call into the studio if you want to talk to one of our guests on 0116 212 9324. So you're listening to Leading Ladies Special on this glorious Saturday morning. First piece of first thing I want to share with everybody. Not many people, or not everybody out there who's either listening or watching, will know that the first Muslim female entrepreneur was actually the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's wife, and she is actually the first female Muslim ever. She was renowned for being the most powerful businesswoman in Saudi Arabia at that time. So for me, I often get asked who's my inspiration, and she is my absolute inspiration. So she was quite a fearless woman, very well respected in a very male-dominated society. So having shared that, I want to bring all of you in and get you to introduce yourselves. One skill as an entrepreneur is all to do with networking, right?
Absolutely.
And what's the first thing you've got to do when you learn? That first skill is all about your elevator pitch. And people think the elevator pitch is about a minute. So it's actually about 20 seconds, but I'm going to give you each a minute to introduce yourself. So Anisa, tell our listeners who you are in a minute.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Anisa. I have a Instagram page where I share pictures of food and recipes, and it's just to let you know, it's Anisagrams on there, and I do share recipes on YouTube as well. So basically recipes that I've grew up with from my grandmother. I used to spend a lot of time in the kitchen with my grandmother, and I love food, and I want people to basically take these recipes and make them at home and share them with their families and enjoy good food.
Thank you. That's a great elevator pitch, and I'll come back to why you started to do that in a minute. Cassie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Cassie, and I own some beautiful venues in Leicester, which are actually about space. Well, so we serve food and drink, but they're actually about spaces for people to come and explore and let them be themselves without any judgment from us. So therefore, for example, the Exchange, a cafe bar opposite Curve, is available for any community use or people to use for any sort of reason. And then I have Queen Victoria Arts Club opposite, which is a restaurant opposite Curve, where people can have a great meal, but also where we have private rooms for people to use for whatever reason they want to use them. Our job is to make people feel special in those spaces.
And if anybody's been down to the Queen Victoria Arts Club, they will know that it is an incredibly beautiful and very special venue. So well done on that, Cassie. I think that was it was quite run down, wasn't it, when you took it over?
Both those two venues were, and so actually part of my drive as an entrepreneur has been over the 20 years that I've been doing this, but particularly with these two, was being about actually contributing to Leicester and contributing to the area with some. By helping the regeneration of the area. So both of those were buildings that were run down, weren't being used, and that other people weren't willing to take on, because actually commercially they're quite difficult to make happen. So part of my drive was to actually do something that was a little bit more than just...
A bit outside the box.
Yeah, and just do something a little bit more special, and something that I felt that was really required for the area as well, rather than just for developing my own business.
And as I said earlier, they're absolutely beautiful, and huge challenge on your part, not just to renovate the buildings, but then, as you say, to make them a commercial success.
Yeah.
And the Queen Victoria Arts Club, how long is it? It's been open just over a year?
No, less than that. We're only 6 months.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
It feels like
6
longer.
months, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting that you say it's longer, because actually it feels that actually. It feels like it should be there.
That you've always been there.
Yeah, exactly.
It really does. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I'm actually quite proud of that.
We feel like it's always been there, as you say.
Yeah.
So fabulous.
Yeah.
So that's the food corner over there, and I really don't want to talk to the food corner when I'm fasting, but we're going to give you a little break, foodies over there. We're going to move over to the glamorous corner over here to Betty. Not to say that food is not glamorous, it is. But Betty, I'm going to call you Betty. I know your real name is Sakina Garcia. But everybody knows you in Leicester as Betty of Betty Brown.
Yeah.
So can we have your elevator pitch?
So I'm still learning and developing this, I think. But if I'm in a networking environment, I introduce myself as Sakina from Betty Brown. And I am a fashion designer where I have my own label that was born in Leicester. And I make clothes of all sorts of varieties, so anything from casual wear to work wear to evening gowns and whatever takes my fancy at the time or whatever I'm inspired by, depending if it's the weather or somebody I've seen. So I have a studio on Allendale Road where people are welcome to come and see what I do. They can see me cutting and sewing and drawing and try out some things.
So your workshop is there?
So yeah, we've changed it. It used to be a boutique. We had a boutique there for 4 years, and we're in the process now of just changing it over to a studio where we still sell our garments and things, but it's a bit more open, so it's more of a concept store, because people really like to see what's going on behind the scenes. So they like to see me at the sewing machine, they like to see the original drawing or the original sketch, and then maybe the cardboard pattern, and it's just more exciting, and it really shows you the depth of what you're buying into.
That actually sounds amazing, seeing behind the scenes. I've always wanted to see behind the scenes in a kitchen, actually, Cassie. I think I'd like to go and have a look one day.
To be honest, our kitchen is absolutely spotless, of course. But it's, I think once you've worked in that industry for a long time, it stops being very interesting. But I do know that that's when we give tours of the building, we do sometimes sneak in there, because that's the bit people really are the most interested in. It's the bit that people don't see, it's the behind the scenes.
It is, isn't it? And we'll come to behind the scenes in a minute, because behind the scenes of an entrepreneur is something else, isn't it? So last but not least, Renu, you are, would I be fair in introducing you as probably the newest kid on the block on this panel?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been in digital marketing for 10 years, but I actually left my full-time job last year, June, to do this. So I do social media coaching, mainly because I found there was a real lack of support for small businesses to learn how to use social media. I think it kind of blew up so big, it didn't really give people the opportunity to learn the skill very well, especially kind of the businesses that have been around for a while and maybe established. But actually do something else as well. So I've got two things, because as well as doing the sort of social media stuff, I also run Leicester Fempreneur Community, which is a community especially for women entrepreneurs who are from the kind of small business sector as well, and independents, just to bring together people, really.
So you gave up. You were working for 10 years for somebody else, and you had a job in sort of a big industry, basically. And so that's actually an enormously brave step. How did you make that step? And just bear with me a second. I've got something over here. Before you answer that question,
okay.
Let's bring in over here one of our Arif Jetsi Varaji. Sister Anisa needs to stop sharing pictures of yummy and tempting foods in the early evenings in Ramadan. Okay, so that's food. I think I probably agree with that. So food corner over here. We'll come back to you in a second. Okay, carry on, Renu. Sorry about that.
So what I found is I've worked in lots of different companies over the last 10 years. And initially I worked in really big businesses. And they had big budgets. And I felt really sad for the smaller businesses because they're the ones I feel don't have the big budgets. They're the ones who need the help. So when I moved, so I'm from London originally. When I moved to Leicester and I worked for a smaller business, I just didn't feel like I was making enough of an impact. And it made me feel really sad. Like I felt there was so much more I could do. So I basically kind of trained my mind, especially sort of 3-4 months before actually handing in my notice, to say that this is what I will be doing, getting myself ready, getting in the right place, because I knew it would be hard. When it comes to courage, when your vision is bigger than the company you work for, it doesn't feel like you're doing a brave thing. It feels like it's the only option you've got. And that's how I felt. I had such big dreams. I knew I couldn't do that if I worked for somebody. So I had to do it on my own.
So you felt as though your wings were clipped where you were?
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, I felt like I was trapped in some ways. And I wanted to create a lifestyle that was based around me. I wanted to have flexibility, and I just couldn't do that if I worked for somebody. You know, you're stuck to a 9-to-5 job in an office. I felt trapped. So it was my only choice to leave and do it for myself.
So I'm going to come back to that 9-to-5 thing you just mentioned, because anybody listening out there thinking, I don't want to work 9-to-5, or I'm trapped in the 9-to-5, thinking actually that being an entrepreneur is an easy ride. Should we dispel that myth? Entrepreneurs around the table. So 9-to-5, you can forget that. Is it 24/7 when you're an entrepreneur?
Yeah,
Betty.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, it takes over your life. If you think, people often think, you can just take the afternoon off and you can go and do this and you can go and do that. And what they don't know is that you went to work on a Saturday morning at 9:00 and you didn't get home until 3:00 on Sunday afternoon the next day. You know, people think that it's quite easy and success just appears and, you're doing great. They don't see the hours and hours that you've slogged and slaved, and you've been up in the sleepless nights, and, you eat, live and breathe work when you start out working for yourself.
And can I just talk the bit about talking and working for yourselves? Renu, you're an entrepreneur. You just sort of less than a year yet.
Yep.
Is it just you at the moment?
Yep, it's just me. Just me.
So you don't have that worry about how am I going to pay the wages?
No, not yet. Moment. Not yet. No.
And Betty, where are you in your stage of entrepreneur business?
Well, that's the responsibility that you do have, is you have to pay people. So we have manufacturers that also work for us. So and we make sure that they're all very well looked after, that they're paid properly, which is really it's a big responsibility. These people are relying on you to get paid every month. So it's a big responsibility.
And that's perhaps something when you're an entrepreneur, or when you decide to set up a business of your own, that's something perhaps that one doesn't always think about. And the day you wake up and think, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay the wages? How am I going to get the money in? How will I bring in enough money in order to pay the wages, is something perhaps that isn't always considered.
I think even just paying your own way. I mean, before don't even think about other people, but obviously I think one big thing that you also don't think about before you start working for yourself is that are you going to have the same amount of money coming in every month? Because if you're not, how are you going to manage that? I find that is a massive thing. So before you even think about other people, how am I going to pay my own wages?
Absolutely.
That's why you work so hard. That's why you're up sometimes at 4 a.m. making notes.
Yeah, you've not got another company paying you the same amount every month. If you don't work, you don't get paid. And people do think it's easy, and
you eat what you kill. So that responsibility is enormous, isn't it? Not just for yourself, but for everybody else.
Sorry. I was just going to say, because in my company, we probably, across the 2 sites, we probably employ about 40 people. And it's not just the paying the wages at the end of the thing.
It's the supplies.
Yeah, it's all of that. But in terms of all of those people and the suppliers and everybody, you're actually become responsible for people's welfare as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am responsible for making sure that they can pay their mortgage at the end of the month, but I'm also responsible for things like their mental health and how they feel about the world and where their ambitions are. And so you end up the depth of your care for the people in your charge is enormous. But actually, you know, and that can be really wearing. It actually sometimes even emotionally wearing because actually you're not only responsible for yourself and your own family, you've got this massive family of people that you are having to take care of. And obviously after you've worked with someone for a few years, you're genuine friends.
And you care
about them.
And actually, small businesses, you end up becoming part of the family. Everybody who works for you, I mean, with our firm, we're the MDS family, and that's how we see everybody. And as you just use the word family as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that responsibility. Somebody once asked me on the radio, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning, Mahmooda? And it's the responsibility for my team. Yeah. And that's what gets me out. You know, I feel that I'm carrying 18 mortgages
absolutely
plus my own, so you know, you have that responsibility as an entrepreneur. So these are all very, very important considerations when you're setting up on your own.
I think what Cassie said is exactly right. Even when I worked on the high street and you've got all these people working for you, it is about making sure that they're happy in their daily life. They work 5 days a week. That's a big proportion of their life they are at
with
work.
you. Yes.
And to ensure that they're happy in that, it's a very good point.
So what made you, I mean, Anissa, do you have people working with you?
It's actually just me and myself, one-man band at the minute. But my husband,
one-woman band, excuse me.
I should say one-woman band. But it's, to be fair, it's me and my husband. Okay. He supports me in everything that I do, actually. So when we do our YouTube videos, we've had our kitchen extended and everything because my husband basically records everything, and even if it's just a 5-10 minute video that goes out, it actually takes 3-4 hours.
And behind the scenes, people don't see.
People don't see behind the scenes, and honestly, there's a lot that goes on. A lot of bickering, sometimes you want to just throw the camera as well, and you think, God, I've had it. You know, my husband. You know, we have that.
But there's a challenge, isn't it?
It's a challenge.
If you work with family. Many entrepreneurs work with family, and actually working with family comes with its challenges.
That's right, yeah.
So
it does take just to get that 5-10 minute video out there, it does take a lot of hours. So the editing he does that, you see. And also having a family as well, so I've got 3 children, so it's having that balance as well. Recently I've been doing a lot of content creating for companies, so like Sainsbury's Co-op, Elmi, that's just to name a few. So it is quite a time, you know, there's a lot of time that goes into it, and not a lot of people kind of understand that, just to get that one piece, one content.
And I think that's we discussed that briefly before we went on air in terms of the iceberg. If you think of an iceberg and you see the tip of the iceberg, but you don't actually see the huge mass of ice underneath the surface of the water, and all that grafting that goes on underneath, nobody is aware of that. And when you are a successful entrepreneur, as we mentioned earlier, people see that you're able to drive a nice car, you're able to, you know, you've got nice clothes, and those are if you like, the outward symbols of success. For let's be fair, that is how people judge, you know, when you've been successful. Whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing or shallow or whatever, that's another matter. But people don't see the stuff that goes on,
the hard work that goes
the hard work.
Actually, it's for me, it's like family obviously is first, but it's just juggling, you know, in the daily, when they go to school, picking them up, you have to sort of work around everything. And I'm sure most parents can relate to that as well, because, you know, most parents, they go out to work and everything. For me, it's at home. Recently I've also been doing demos as well, so at the Halal London Food Festival. So it's making arrangements with children, so the grandparents, so it's like a ripple effect. It affects everybody in the family. Like my parents will be involved as well, and
So we'll come back to
Yeah.
family in a second. We're
Yeah.
about to take a commercial break. You're listening to Ramadan Special on EAVA 102.5 FM. You're listening to Leading Ladies. I've got Anissa from Cook with Anissa in the studio. I've got Cassie Davison from the Queen Victoria Arts Club and the Exchange Bar. I've got Sakina Garcia, Betty from Betty Brown, and I've got Renu Ravalia, who is our social media whiz and founder of Fempreneurs. So please join us after the commercial break. Connect with us on Facebook Live. While we go into the break, I'm going to say hello to Omar Khan, to Soraya Adam, to Hassan Hussein, to Riaz Udin. See you after the break.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, I just want to say a big jazakumullahu khairah for all of you that have donated to help me build this city retreat here in Leicester. Alhamdulillah. With your help, we have almost finished off the building work. We've completed 2 prayer halls, wudu areas, 2 offices, a kitchen area, a basement area, subhanallah. And we've delivered many amazing services with your donations to boot. For example, we've helped countless homeless people through our night shelter on the coldest days of winter for the past 3 years, as well as hosting thousands of individuals to pray Jummah and their daily prayers. Many have taken Shahada here, and they've been looked after in our weekly study circles and new Muslim support programs. Hundreds of youth have been empowered each month, and exhibitions about this beautiful faith have been held. Alhamdulillah. This Ramadan, you can gain an amazing reward by helping us to finish off our final building works and create a garden and a cafe for our guests. We just need £27,000 more to finish off all of our work.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes.
Welcome back to Leading Ladies. We have got 4 guests in the studio. You're listening to Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. The guests I have in the studio are, I'm going to start on my right this time. I've got Renu Ravalia, who is our social media whiz. I have got our glamorous Betty Brown, Sakina from Betty Brown Boutique, who you may have seen on, it's Allendale Road. Is it Allendale Road? Allendale Road. I always mix up Francis Street and Allendale Road. I've got the lovely Cassie Davison here from Queen Victoria Arts, from the Queen Victoria Arts Club. I always miss the club off. And I've got Anisa from Cook with Anisa. So many of you may be familiar, and let me put my headphones back on so I can hear what's going on. Anisa from Cook with Anisa. So before the break, we were talking about mums, and we were talking about family life and being an entrepreneur as a woman. So coming back to, there's 2 points really I want to talk about is, as an entrepreneur, being a female entrepreneur, have you felt in any way, any of you, that you've faced challenges from other women or men? And are they, is there still this thing about you're a female businesswoman, or is that a kind of thing of the past? Anisa?
I think being a Muslim in a hijab, I find sometimes in the community, I think people do kind of judge you. I feel that they feel, that why is a woman on YouTube?
I hope you remind them of our Prophet ﷺ's wife.
Yes, I mean, our Prophet ﷺ's wife, Khadija, was a businesswoman. So I think, you've got to look at the bigger picture, that if you even change one person's life, to me, I mean, that's everything. It's like, when I share recipes, I have so many people messaging me on Instagram or on all the other platforms that I have, and they say, my 14-year-old's made something, and
that's amazing.
You really helped her out, encourage them. Or there's even adults, like they've gone to uni, or they've never been around the kitchen much, or they're just not that confident, and having them, those messages come, it really, I really feel good.
So you said something to me on your way in, I'm not that great. Anisa, if you do that, you are a leading lady through and through, and that's why you're on this programme, because that's what you are. But, I mean, Cassie, have you got something to add to that? You've had some experiences.
Well, yeah, when I opened my business 20 years ago, my first business, and I was ridiculously naive and stupidly brave and just sort of dived in there and did it and didn't really think about these kind of issues. But I'm in a very, very male-dominated business. I mean, actually, in hospitality, it is kind of 50-50, but actually, when you get to management and you get to ownership of the business, it's ridiculously low how few women are actually running hospitality businesses. And so it wasn't until I sort of had been doing it for quite a while that I really noticed that. I just hadn't considered it. But recently, well, in the last 2 years, my husband came to work with me in my business.
Not for you.
Not for me, with me. I let him work with me.
You let him, I like that.
I did. Well, they were my businesses. So, yes, he came to work with me. But what was really interesting, and actually, I mean, fortunately, we found it amusing because we have a relationship that's, a genuine partnership. But was when we started having meetings with our suppliers or with other people outside of the business, that actually suddenly the people who'd been working with me for the last 8 years and not had any issues with, were suddenly only addressing him. And
Wow.
it was emails to him and missing me out of copying in to them.
How did you deal with that? Did you address that?
I
don't mean with your husband, but the people.
No, I think, as I say, I think because my relationship with my husband was very much that we are a genuine partnership, and so there wasn't any difficulties there. We actually just work with it. And
But
actually,
how did that make you feel as the business owner? How did that make you feel?
I think had it happened younger, I think I would have been more cross and angry about it. Actually, I think I'm now, I say 20 years in, I'm very confident about my abilities in the business and what I'm doing. And I think my confidence allows me to just go, well, actually, that's their problem, not mine. And actually, how can we use that in order to a positive,
Yes.
and how can we get the best out of people? And actually, although it's disappointing that we still live in a world where that is the case, and some people prefer to speak to a man than they do to a woman, actually, from our point of view, if it's the best way to get things done, then that's how we'll get things done.
So that's the smart way of sort of looking at it and turning a negative into a positive.
Yeah,
I've got to say, I get plenty of letters addressed to Mr. Musa of Musa Duke, and there is no Mr. Musa of Musa Duke. So but you're right, we absolutely deal with that.
Yeah.
So I mean, Betty, have you had that experience?
Absolutely, but it tends to be when I'm abroad. If I'm in dealing with suppliers or factories, or it's all very male orientated. So when they see a woman turn up for a meeting, it's all of a sudden everything changes a bit there. The energy changes. It's like they don't really have interest. And I've actually left suppliers before thinking, if you don't want to take my money, that's fine. There's business elsewhere to have. Just because they don't want to give you time of day, they don't really show you much respect. Like, it's very difficult.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just a sort of an old-fashioned way of thinking about things? What do you think what do you think it is?
I think it possibly is, and I think in some of those areas, some of those parts of the world, they're not used to women. They're not used to women coming forward and being the front of house, and this is my business, and this is how I run it, and these are the things I want.
So a cultural thing, possibly.
I think so. I think they're just not used to it, but then also I think I don't know, I really feel like they don't take me seriously, and then it's only until you start showing them money or you show how serious you are, then all of a sudden they change. But when you first walk into a room, there definitely is.
So perhaps what you're saying is that once you have proved yourself, so it's an initial sort of unconscious bias coming across,
Absolutely.
And you've kind of had to prove yourself. And only when you proved yourself that somebody will take you seriously.
Yes, and coming across in emails, it's not so bad. But if you walk into a room or you walk into a factory, they're sort of shocked to see you there, and
also
and alone as a single. If I'm traveling abroad and I'm alone, and I'm walking into a factory, it can be really intimidating at times. Yeah, absolutely. And when you're faced there with 5 men and you're just standing there telling them what you want.
And I'm sure you get what you want as well. So in the end, but it's just an uphill battle.
That's right.
Well done for sticking at it and not being discouraged by that. So that in itself is something to be commended. But it's good to know that it's important to know that those challenges still exist. And actually, if you are thinking of setting up on your own, then those are things that you perhaps need to think about and bear in mind. Because it isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. Renu.
You know what? It's funny because, first of all, I think I attract a lot of women. Everyone's like, boss babes, girl power, girl tribe. So I have to say in the last year, my experience has been pretty positive. I think what helps as well is coming from London, which is a big city, a lot of my people are still there as well, because obviously Leicester's only been about 3 years. But I come from kind of a community. I'm Sindhi, which is completely different to I'm Hindu. I'm Sindhi, and as we're very entrepreneurial as a community, so I think a woman starting her own business is actually oh wow, well done, you go for it, girl, kind of thing. So it's been actually really, really nice for me. I think I've only had one experience where I've had somebody come in for a one-to-one session with me, and you could tell this gentleman walked in and he was very much like kind of didn't really pay much attention to me. Within about 10 minutes of me talking, he just changed. He kind of went a bit quiet and actually started to engage with me, because you realize very quickly that you know what you're talking about. And once you can, again, proving yourself, you've proven what you're talking about, people then stop and listen. And I think that's what it is.
Yes.
You have to be very clear on what you're doing, and if you've got so much experience, they've got no reason not to listen to you as well.
Absolutely
No?
right. You know your stuff.
You know your stuff, exactly.
You know your stuff and know it really well, and you blow people away by your
Yeah.
intelligence and your ability.
Exactly.
Ultimately, and I think we've got to remember that as women, that at the end of the day, it's not about your gender, it's about your ability, and sometimes that's lost in translation. So let me just remind our listeners where we are. We are Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. We have in the studio, if you've just joined us, you're listening to Mahmooda Duke, who's talking to Anissa from Cook with Anissa, with Cassie Davison. I better slow down. Actually, I'm going to give a shout out to my mum. Mum, if you're listening, I'll slow down. I am speaking very quickly. So Betty Brown, Sakina Garcia from Betty Brown. I just caught myself. And Renu Ravalia, our social whiz kid. So what is your company called, Renu?
So I don't actually have a name as such. So when I was setting it up, what I really wanted to do is think of a brand. I just couldn't think of one. So I'm just Renu. I am Renu Ravalia. That's my Instagram handle as well. I don't have a name yet. I am my brand, basically.
Well, I think that's cool. I'm Renu and Renu.
Yes, exactly.
I am Renu. There's only one Renu. It's like, Madonna doesn't need
Yeah,
a surname,
exactly.
does she? So great. Now, talking about family, and we mentioned Anissa brought in family here, and balancing children and running a business, because we've already alluded to the fact that business, when you're an entrepreneur, there's no 9 to 5, put your clock off, go home, and then you've got your evening with your children, your weekend with your children. It's actually 24/7. So, and that is no exaggeration, because you can't put it down when it's your own business. You are responsible. So Cassie, you've got 4 children. I look at you and I think, how do you deal with 4 children and running your business?
With difficulty, I think, is the short answer. But I think that is a reflection of all entrepreneurs. I think that the whole thing is that you are, as you say, you have a task list that never ends.
We talked about that.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Actually, you gave me some fantastic tips on how to manage my task list. But I think that having children just is adding to that task list. And I think that when I first started, I didn't have children, but when I first started having children, I tried to work out how could I separate my work from my family. And I think over time I've developed a way of sort of being able to switch off when I need to, so that my family can have my attention, because I think that's really important, that I can go, no, that's work and that's family. But I think ultimately what I've ended up with is just this huge kind of mess of things happening, and sometimes that's a family responsibility and sometimes it's a work responsibility, and somehow we just manage it. But as I say, I think that's actually a reflection of general entrepreneurship in any case, how you just manage to get things done. And I think actually you also have to be quite prepared for things not to be perfect. And I think that that's really important, because actually if you're striving for perfection whilst you have these huge task lists, you're never going to achieve it.
And that's actually a really interesting point you make, because I'm sure that many entrepreneurs, and I'm sure everybody I've got around this table is by nature a perfectionist. And that's a lesson that we probably have to learn. And I remember reading a really interesting quote in a Mercedes-Benz, and it was, "That will do, will not do." And I live by that. My staff know that, and that's a mantra in our office. And even if I'm not there, somebody will say, you know what MD will say, "That will do, will not do." So they have to go back and do it again. But you're quite right. There is that element, and it holds you back sometimes. And you've got to choose what you can deal with, sort of accept non-perfection. There are some things that you can't.
But also, I think it's not to say that you don't strive for perfection.
Yes.
But that you're patient in terms of achieving it. that actually you realise that sometimes it can take years to get somewhere and to achieve something. And certainly, I mean, I know that I think this goes for most people here. When you're setting up a business, sometimes it's years of thought and time that have gone into, and the tiny little steps that are made in order to do that. And I think that when you're trying to manage this, and we're trying to manage it with a family as well, it's the small steps and the small progress you're making, striving for that perfection, but accepting that you're not there yet.
And it doesn't happen overnight, as we alluded to.
I think it's being kind to yourself. I think I'm just learning now to be kinder to myself for not saying, oh, I've not reached this yet and I've not done that yet. I think you're striving for perfection, and not to be so harsh on yourself all the time.
You end up also having really high expectations of yourself.
Yeah.
Like obviously I'm always listening to podcasts and positive stuff and mindset stuff, and I'm always thinking, they always say, when you do something good, stop and celebrate it. Where's the time to celebrate it? You have to do the next thing. It's quite relentless. You just keep going. But I think being kind is so, sometimes just actually being, I'm going to take a few hours off and I'm going to just think about me. Self-care.
That's really valuable advice, actually. And I know I've certainly been a victim of not taking care of myself, and there is a danger that you burn out if you don't take time. And Femi, who was on the program last year, and a great friend of mine, she's very much about, Mahmooda, take some time out, come and have a massage. And that's just not me. I was not brought up, Mum, if you're listening, my mum, we never took time out. My mum and dad they worked every hour God sent. They were not great examples to me in that respect, but they gave me my work ethic, I have to say. But it is important that you take time out for yourself. You're quite right.
I just want to say that I respect any woman who works, who runs her own business and has children. I still don't know how you do it. I always ask women this, like, how do you do it? And I'm pretty much on the go, and I've got loads and loads of energy, but I just have full respect for any woman who does that.
So, Renu, I want to ask you, because anybody listening out there thinking, I want to set up my own business, but actually listening to these women, it sounds like I would never have time for my family. But actually, it isn't that, is it? Because Renu, can you share what you said to me earlier in terms of setting up on your own had something to do with you wanting to have a family?
Yeah, so as I've said a few times, I'm obviously from London, and I've known for a long time that I wanted to be in a position where I could take care of my children. That was always, I wanted to be around because my parents were around. Although they worked very hard, they were there. So I knew that if I wanted to be in that position when I do have children, the only way to do that is to set myself up right now and make sure that I am in a position where I'm making money and I'm working for myself. That has been my drive, really. I want to be there. I don't want to miss out on anything. And actually having parents as well who were there for me, it kind of gave me a bit more, again, this vision thing, it gave me an idea of where I wanted to be. So that was always my motivation, really.
I mean, if I share I'm an entrepreneur too, and so I can share that my daughter was 6 years old when I set up my business, and because although I had a never-ending task list and I worked every hour, we were given, I could take time out when my daughter came home, and so I stopped when she came home at 4:00 and gave her some attention and time. And actually the other thing was she was able to she was 6 years old and she could just play next to mummy. I didn't have many clients in those days, but she could just play while I was working, and she could be at my side and I was still with her. So it wasn't as though I had to leave her somewhere else. She could work with me.
Yeah,
Anissa.
That's right. You see, for me, working in a call centre and then having my second, I've got a daughter, she's 12, and then my second is when he was born. Shortly after, my third came along. I think my second was about 15 months. So I had to juggle, I had to think about what I actually wanted to do. Having the passion for cooking and baking as well, because I think I didn't mention I used to also bake and take orders at home for biscuits and when it was Eid and things like that.
You're making us very hungry.
So working in a call centre and then also doing that as well as part-time, and then having the children, I thought I have to make a decision now whether I'm going to go to work or carry on with this passion I've got of cooking and baking and everything. And having the two, it was like having twins as well. So like you say, you know, having the kids at home, I still carried on with my baking and taking orders, desserts and things like that for parties and sandwiches and things like that. And I carried that, and it was just all about priority for me. So I still carried on, and then from that, it's kind of moved on to my YouTube, and then like doing live shows and doing a bit of presenting as well. So it's kind of opened up a lot of things. It's evolved.
Yes.
So like, you know, when you say that, you don't know how people do it with children at the time. You will know, okay, what's right for me.
Yes.
You will adapt, and you will think, right, it will be on your mind, and you'll know, and it'll just all fall in place.
And you know, it just goes to show how resilient we are as women. That so many pressures we are able to juggle. And, you know, the home, the children, the family, the parents, the business, the work family, all of those sorts of things. And it just, it's phenomenal.
That's right. And it doesn't mean you have to stop and just say, okay, I'm just going to stay
it's one or the other.
mom.
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
You can do both.
You of course you can.
So
when you put your mind to it.
So I think the message that we're giving to anybody out there who is thinking, I'd like to set up my own business, I think every one of us in this room would say, go for it. Go, girl. Yeah. Go do it. It's all possible. Everything. Whatever you put your mind to is possible. And, you know, support from people around you. And don't be afraid.
Yeah, I think it's just restriction in your mind. I think
100%.
And that's when you stop and being negative. And I think you just go out there and just do it. And even if there's people that tell you don't do it,
doesn't matter.
As long as you believe.
As long as you know you're making a difference.
As long as you believe.
And you know you believe in what you're doing, you've got the passion for it, and you know you're not harming anyone, and this is, you're passionate about it.
It's about living your purpose, isn't it?
And I think sometimes it's actually better not to talk about it too much in the early stages. This is what I found. I found it better not to really tell too many people, because that's when that belief goes in yourself. Because you know you can do this. You know it deep down. You feel that this is your purpose, like you said. But the second you start talking about it, sometimes I find people like, are you sure? And that, are you sure? That is when you think, oh, hold on a second. Am I sure? Yeah, so I think initially, if I had to give some advice, it'd be don't say too much in the beginning. Be in a place where you know 100% that that's what you want.
Get your product, be ready.
Yeah. Be ready.
Be launch ready, and then talk about it.
Yeah.
And I would just add that, you know, it's about being brave, and as I say, but it doesn't need to be brave in terms of what you were talking about, the iceberg.
Yes.
It's not jumping in right at the top. It's brave in terms of those small
foundations.
steps. I mean, one of the bravest people I know is my daughter, and she's almost sometimes crippled with anxiety. She can't leave the house sometimes. Yeah. So every single morning she gets up, she puts her school uniform on and walks out the door. Is a huge step of bravery. Wow. But those are the foundations in terms of how you build your resilience and your confidence, and then how you create these steps forward. And I say it's a longer term thing. It's about it takes a long time to get to where you want to get to, and it's small steps, and every single brave step you take towards that should be congratulated.
Absolutely.
Well, we've heard some absolutely phenomenal things today from the 4 entrepreneurs in this room, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to share their social media handle. I haven't forgotten Renu. I remembered. But before I do that, I want to just share with everybody who's listening a little bit about Leading Ladies. And Leading Ladies, this radio program started in 2016 when I interviewed Baroness Saida Varsi. In 2018, we didn't do 2017, but in 2018 I had a whole month of amazing women. And those amazing women I invited back to my home, and we had a party to celebrate the end of Ramadan, and for me to thank everybody for coming on the program. So be prepared for a party, girls. But it was all this, we were all inspiring women in our own right. And my vision, going back to that vision, was to inspire women and girls and to carry on doing that together, because my view is that together we have so much more impact. And so Leading Ladies is now no longer just a radio program, but we have now created Leading Ladies Global. And the vision is to inspire 10 million women and girls over the next 10 years. So on the 24th of June, we've got our first celebration of that. And so please come along if you're interested. On Eventbrite, you can book on, and all these ladies are going to be there. Every lady that you've heard on Leading Ladies over the last 2 years, 2018, 2019. I'm trying to get Saida Vasi to come along if I can. She was one of my first. But come along. We've got some great things going on at Leicestershire County Cricket Club. Now, I'm not a lady, but am I invited? Well, I think I have to say no on this occasion. I might make a special exception on another time. But please come along. Quickly Twitter handles, and then I've got to close. I've got 56 seconds left. Very quickly.
Okay, so it's Anissa Grounds on Instagram and Cook with Anissa on YouTube.
Okay.
Queen Vic Leicester.
Betty?
Life of Betty Brown and on Instagram, and Betty Brown on Facebook.
I am Renu Ravalia on Instagram and Leicester Fempreneur Community on Instagram too.
So thank you all so much for coming and joining me. I want to thank Zainab, who is my research assistant. I want to thank Akil, my producer. I want to thank Anissa, Cassie, Betty, and Renu, who I hope you've got to know in the last hour. Please join me next Friday on Ramadan Radio, brought to you by EAVA FM. I'm going to have Karen Rothery, the first female CEO of Leicestershire County Cricket Club, Nazreen Issa, who heads up the Women in Leadership programme at University of Leicester, and Sandra Pollock, the founder of the East Midlands Women's Awards. They are my leading ladies next week. Please join me on Ramadan on 102.5 FM.